Well, hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Um, Real quick, there are probably all sorts of things that I should tell you, but your mics will be muted. We'll give you some details on this presentation afterwards. You'll be able to access the video recording. If there are questions we don't have time to get to, there's a lot of meat to this, but we're also trying to be as fast as we can be to get you on your way. If it turns out we can't get to your questions, Sally will take those, kind of work through those, and get you back answers later. We may have time and try to save time at the end as possible for questions and answers. But real quickly, thank you for joining us. And before we move on to Christmas break and drinking eggnog, we thought maybe we'll bring you one more Christmas present this year. And what could anybody want except for a 2026 Nacha rules update, right? So you've got this, it's actually a pretty interesting one this year. Before we go further, though, and I introduce Sally, I wanted to step back and maybe just real quickly explain to the few of you on here probably that aren't familiar with Saltmarsh, just to give you a little bit of background. 1 minute commercial, so to speak. Been around over 80 years. Most of that time we have served financial institutions, banks, credit unions, trust companies, nowadays fintechs as well. I think at our heart, we believe we can look at anything, test, review anything that you've got inside of your institutions. We really have a subject matter domain expert, kind of like Sally, across all of the domains. And truly, I think we believe we are bankers at heart. I don't know if I've told you this, Sally. Maybe I've told this to others. But even after all these years, I guess I've been here at Saltmarsh for 8 years now. I still actually have banker as my job title on my tax return. Probably time to update that, I guess, right? But we love banking. We love working with you. We appreciate you joining us today. To give you a brief introduction to Sally, she really does kind of head up our payments, our ACH area. She's a subject matter expert, been around for quite a while doing this. She has worked pretty hard today to kind of look at the changes that are coming in the next year. And some years, to be honest with you, it's kind of a boring sort of an update, not a lot going on. But I think when she gets into this, digs into this, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, you're going to see there's potentially quite a bit more coming up this year than what we're used to. So I want to kind of step out of the way, Sally, give you a chance to jump into the meat of this, the value of this, and let you just kind of take it away. And I'll be here, go off camera. If you need me, holler. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Can you hear me good and see me good?
I hear you well and I see you well.
Great, great. Just wanting to make sure. Again, thank you, Jason, for the kind introduction. I wanted to welcome everyone, and today we're going to go over the Nacha updates for 2026. So with these changes, we're just going to touch about every corner of the ACH network. So you're looking at all parties involved. And really my goal here is just to make it feel simple, clear, practical, overall just doable. So keep in mind, none of this is to overwhelm you. These are just rules that simply strengthen and add some transparency to fraud monitoring. So let's just take a look. And before I begin, I also want to mention I do talk about some software. However, I'm not doing any endorsements today. I'm trying to go through some of the questions that we've already received prior to this webinar. So I want to make sure that those software platforms are included, just to give you some sample examples of them. Okay. So here is the big picture. We have several effective dates in 2026 that we need to keep on our radar. You'll see a new descriptor requirement for payroll and purchase, entries, new monitoring obligations, and new ACH credit monitoring for RDFIs. Now, again, keep in mind, all of these changes just work together. And we're hoping this just makes everything a little stronger in our fraud defenses. And we also have this last update on here for IET definition. And that's just a revamp of the IET definition to make things clearer and make sure that people are properly using that code. Okay, So at a high level, these updates are about strengthening the network, closing some gaps that fraudsters have been exploiting. Nacha also wants to make sure that receivers have more clarity when they see transactions hit their account. They also want organizations and institutions to have better tools and expectations for spotting those suspicious activities. Um, and keep in mind, you are already doing some of these things, but maybe you just don't have those policies and procedures in place. So hopefully this will build some confidence. And I think that they're really going to make a difference. Okay. And another little before we begin on the rules, I wanted to kind of go over one question that I am getting consistently. Do we have to have new agreements signed? So I've gotten this question multiple times in this last quarter. So the good news is that you possibly do not. Most of you can rely on a modification clause that you may have in your agreements. You will need to get with your legal counsel and determine what works for your organization. If you do not have that modification clause, it's a good time to update those agreements. And again, get with your legal counsel on that. Now, if you do have the modification clause, you can possibly providing an addendum, an ACH rule supplement instead of re-executing entire agreements. And honestly, if you do have that, that's going to be the easiest and most efficient path for you. Okay. Just make sure that you keep proof of delivery, email logs, portal confirmations, really whatever system that you're using. It's about keeping track of that. Now, keep in mind that these updates need to go to all parties. So if you're originating through, you have originators, third-party senders, you have service providers. Consistency is key here. So you do have to make these changes for everyone involved. Okay, so this approach allows for every party in the network to update their obligations efficiently while staying compliant. So take a look at your agreements, go back and see if you have that clause. It may save you some time. Okay, so let's get started with the descriptor updates. So we have here the payroll and purchase. Now these sound simple, but they do bring a lot of clarity to receivers and help reduce some of that confusion when they're looking at their statements or memo post items. Okay, so beginning March 20th of 2026, anything that is considered, any transaction that is considered a wage or compensation must use the term payroll in that company entry description. So think about this with as a transparency tool, right? So when an contractor sees the transaction on online banking, they immediately recognize that it's their compensation. Now, as an ODFI, you do not have to police it, but you do need to make sure that your originators know what is required and to apply it correctly. Okay. So the easiest way for originators to stay compliant is having updated templates. So go ahead and get those updated. And if there is, say, descriptors that auto-populate for them, if this is already updated, it's going to remove any chances of error. Now, again, we go back to agreements and supplements, addendums. You need to make sure that these are in your onboarding packages too. Make sure that they because I know we have a lot of our institutions that have payroll. So it's important that this information is updated in these areas so they are fully aware of that expectation prior to initiating that first entry. Okay, and you can perform file testing. Take a quick look and confirm payroll is being used correctly. Okay, education is going to go a long way here. So making sure that your originators and your third parties are fully aware. because most have not heard of the rule. So if they are not aware, sending them just a code and a rule book is not going to make them aware, because what are the chances that each one of them is going to actually open that up and look at the new updates if you're not providing them? Okay, so here we have a good example of a small business that pays its staff through ACH and also sends monthly the contractor payroll. So both of those credits should be batched with payroll. However, say separate expenses, reimbursements, maybe bonus batches, those could carry different descriptors. So just make sure that you are aware of what types of transactions that your originator they're conducting. That way you know when you do testing if they are properly coding these. Okay, and an originator that can run that exception report. So you can run an exception report that flags batches that are missing that payroll. You can look at that originator and just see, and that's just a simple control that you can add that monitoring, right? And it shows that you are monitoring this. Now for ODFIs, those spot checks, you can add those at risk reviews. So if you have your annual review, you can just do a spot check and verify that they are properly using this descriptor at that time, and that would cover you as well. Okay, so shifting to purchase, very similar, of course, to payroll. However, with this is going to be any e-commerce debit, which would be something where a consumer purchases something online. With that, it must include the word purchase. And again, this is incredibly helpful for your RDFIs because you're handling disputes or inquiries. You have people calling into the call center asking what something is. It just makes it a little easier and probably will cut down on some of the calls, not all of the calls, of course. However, it will help trigger that memory of what that transaction is. And again, ODFIs do not have to validate every single descriptor. It's more about educating your originators. So you need to inform your originators and third-party senders of the requirement through those educational materials. Again, onboarding guides, making sure they are fully aware of this requirement that you have. Okay. So similar to payroll, this is really the best way to implement purchase automation. Update those checkout systems, gateways, billing platforms, anything that's tied to online authorization. Online merchants and billers should work with their payment gateway to automatically populate purchase. And that's going to save a ton of time when you're spot check. So as long as that consumer is using that, creating a purchase online, a debit, this needs to have that purchase in that company entry description. So this also goes for recurring orders, and first, if it's just one, those as well. So you need to take a look at your originators and your third parties and just make sure that this is getting taken care of because March is coming around pretty quickly. Now, for our third-party service providers in the room, you want to help your clients test those descriptors, okay? So a test transaction will really just clear things up pretty easily. Okay, so here we just have a couple examples. Say a customer, you go online and buy a sofa from an online retailer, or you subscribe to your monthly pet supplies, or a bark box or something like that. You could see the word purchase on your bank statement. And it really does just reduce confusion on disputes. It may even help with having less disputes, hopefully. Again, automation is key. So just make sure purchase is automatically populated, and that will just reduce the risk dramatically. Okay. Okay. So we're going to move on to the biggest part of today's session, which is fraud monitoring. So with these upcoming rules, they affect every participant. So not just financial institutions. So whether you're an ODFI, RDFI, third party, service provider, these expectations are going to apply to you, and they roll out into phases. So our first phase begins March 20th of 2026. So it's just around the corner. Now, this is going to be our larger ODFIs, originators, our third parties. And just keep in mind, Nacha is not asking you to monitor every single entry pre-processing. Okay, so that is a question I get consistently as well. Keep in mind that these can be done after the entries have posted. So this rule is risk-based, not volume-based. Okay, so phase one of this monitoring rule applies first to those larger volume participants, but you do not have long before you get to that second phase. Those who originate or transmit more than 6 million ACH entries in 2023. Okay, these institutions really are going to set the tone for the network. And the goal here really is to establish risk-based processes that are designed to identify those entries that are suspected of being unauthorized or obtained under false pretenses. Now, Nacha does recognize that fraud monitoring is going to look different, right? It's going to look different depending on your size, the complexity. I mean, that is a concern, right, with staff. Do we have the staff to do this? So the rule doesn't prescribe any single method. Instead, it gives you some flexibility to develop procedures that make sense for your institution. So larger institutions might say leverage AI or anomaly detection tools, and smaller organizations might rely on targeted exception reports and dual control. Risk-based monitoring is going to be the key word here that you're going to hear. And not to, again, clarify that institutions are not expected to screen every entry or perform monitoring pre-processing. So monitoring can occur post-processing, and it should be risk-based. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go through what risk-based actually means. So you focus on the areas that present the greatest fraud exposure. So not everyone, not everything, just those highest risk categories. So keep in mind that Nacha allows reliance on your originator, third party, as long as that reliance is documented. Now, participant must review their monitoring program at least annually. So you'll need to check on it annually, documenting any updates to reflect any new fraud trends. Okay. So that annual review step is key, and it's going to be your audit trail. So showing continuous improvements that you're making. This rule, as Nacha is encouraging, is going to be a trust but verify approach. So you trust your processes, but you're continuously verifying if they still work, if changes need to be made, right? So if you're also a third party, if you're a third party sender, this is huge because you originate for, multiple clients as well. And you want to tier those clients by risk and tailor your monitoring based on their behavior in the industry. Okay, so let's take a look and review some practical fraud monitoring controls. There may be many commercially reasonable ways to implement monitoring, but dual control really has always been the foundation, right? We always check if dual control is in place, just ensuring that that one employee cannot create and release payment files without another's approval. That's been, that's top priority. Next, consider your velocity reports, your anomaly reports. These highlight spikes in volume, your dollar value, frequency of transactions, and even simple Excel-based reports can reveal, red flags that you may have, right? So maybe another important control could be verifying any change in payment instructions. So emails, business email compromises are extremely uh, relevant at this time. So this could help prevent any pay impersonation scams, right? So most institutions say you already have something in place. I'm going to mention some software. So Verifin, that's been a big question. How can Verifin help me? I already have this program. So if you're already using programs and platforms like Verifin, core-based ACH monitoring reports help. These systems won't need wholesale replacement. You can just simply make them a part of your risk-based monitoring approach. Most of you already have some of these things in place, but documentation is needed, right? So what Nacha expects is documentation showing how these tools support your monitoring processes, how those alerts are reviewed, escalated, how they're resolved. So documentation is key. So your existing tools could generally continue to work, but documentation around how you use them becomes more important. Okay. So, and again, with our third-party senders, this should mirror the same internal controls expected of our dual control for file creation and release, change management controls for updating bank information, anomaly detection for a new originator behavior. And your third parties also play a key role in educating their clients, especially small businesses, on fraud prevention, best practices, securing their credentials, callback verification. So there is a lot of effort from everyone in the network on this one. Okay, so documentation, again, written documentation is going to be critical. Your regulators, your auditors, we don't come in and just ask, hey, does this exist? Do you have it? We want to actually see if it's working. What are you doing? So we're going to ask, how does it work? So keep copies of your procedures, sample reports, any case studies that you have showing when your system caught something, right, and investigated it. So we want to see how that worked, what happened. I would also each year schedule a formal review of your fraud detection controls and, just take a look at what worked, what changed, any new trends that you're all seeing, that record and demonstrate that you have, that you got due diligence, you're proactive in your risk management. And again, third-party senders, documentation is critical. Sometimes those get swept under the rug, and you need these monitoring controls just as much as your ODFI and your originators do. So you should maintain written evidence of alerts that are triggered within your platforms, any action taken with your clients, and if it's necessary, you need to escalate that and get that to your ODFI when needed. So that's something to think about. Okay, so here we just have a few practical controls that fit into a risk-based framework. Again, dual control, reviewing anomalies, velocity reports, validating account change. All of these are reasonable, and expected from Nacha. Now, again, existing tools like Verifin, AFS, our core system reports absolutely qualify. So Nacha's not asking you to buy a whole new system. They're just asking you to show how you're using your current system responsibly. They're not defining commercially reasonable in detail, but it expects that layered protection, right? So for example, you might authenticate a file submission through multi-factor logins, validate account ownership before debits, and monitor transaction patterns for anomalies. So they're not expecting you to go out and buy new systems. There's an approach for all institutions. Okay, so now we're going to move on to phase two. Now this is where fraud monitoring requirements expand to everyone in the network. So even if you're smaller, you're a smaller institution, organization, or you don't originate a ton of volume, keep in mind Nacha still expects you to have that documented risk-based processes in place by this date. So June 22nd, 2026, you need to have it ready. Now, the good news, you do have that flexibility. You don't have to build anything overly complex. You can scale it to your size. That's the whole point of this rule. It doesn't mean you need that expensive software. You can do manual reviews. You can get reports off your core system, reports built on your core system if that's something that would make it easier for you, and daily reconciliations as well. That is part of this. The key here is really showing consistency, reasonable processes that are going to match your risk profile. So think about what makes sense for you. That's going to be simple reports, dual control, daily reviews. So whatever fits your operations while still helping you identify activity that just maybe doesn't look right or sit well. Okay, so we do have a lot of smaller institutions, so I really wanted to throw this in here. So for our smaller institutions, our organizations, our vendors that don't really have large volume of automated systems that can help. Here's what I want you to really remember. You can absolutely still meet this requirement with the tools you already have. Okay, something as simple as those reports that I mentioned, manual review, tracking spreadsheets, exceptions that you see, that meets Notch's attempt. The real key here is consistency, making sure that you are reviewing something daily, make sure the step is written in your procedures. If you document alerts, keep the logs organized. Nacha really just wants to see a routine that's repeatable and makes sense for your size, all right? So if your organization is smaller, it just needs to make sense. Okay, so just a couple of common red flags that you may want to build into your logic. These are indicators Nacha and the industry see over and over again. Sudden IP address changes, spikes in new payees, those unusual high return rates or repeat reversals from that same originator, something that just triggers, hey, this is unusual, right? So when you see these, even if they turn out to be legitimate, treat them as early warning signs. Now, it's that moment where you're like, does this make sense? That's the simple question you can do alone that can catch fraud before they think you're even paying attention to it, those fraudsters. So you'll want to monitor your high return rates as always, which you should already be doing, especially those R10s and those R11s. That could actually signal authorization issues, compromised accounts. So tracking these patterns across time really just helps you spot potential fraud and take that corrective action before those funds are lost. Okay. Now what we're going to do is just kind of look at the ODFI and those responsibilities, because the ODFI plays that key gatekeeper role in the ACH network. You're not only responsible for your own monitoring, but you're also responsible for ensuring that your originators and your third-party senders are meeting their obligations too. Okay, so for my ODFIs, keep in mind that your responsibility doesn't stop at your own internal monitoring. You're also expected to evaluate fraud controls, right, for your originators, for your third parties, that they have those in place. So again, what can you do? Go back to those agreements, see what is in the agreement, see if you have that modification clause, provide them with the addendums, the supplements, if so. Provide additional education. To me, education is key. Making sure they understand these requirements include language requiring that they have ongoing fraud monitoring that needs to be done, and cooperation during investigations if you have to look into things further. So just ensure that your originators are aware of the updated requirements. And if you see something unusual like high returns, inconsistent behavior, reach out early. I cannot stress the importance of your reviews that you're doing with your originators and your third parties, making sure of their financial stability is important, making sure that we all know something can happen quickly, right? So just keep your eye on them and reach out if you see any unusual behavior. Do it quickly. Okay, so here is where it all ties together. Nacha wants to see proof, not just that you have processes in place, but you can actually use those processes. So at least once per year, review your fraud monitoring program for the effectiveness of it, update it to reflect any new risk or technology changes you may have. Keep examples, right? Keep examples of alerts, investigation notes, adjustments. They're going to show that continuous improvement. Also ensure that your ACH risk management program aligns with your BSA, your AML processes. So coordinate between those teams to just strengthen this fraud prevention. And it ensures, consistent reporting between groups when you have suspicious activity. Okay. Okay. Now, again, many of the alerts that you rely on right now already exist. Usually within your fraud or your AML tools, so you probably already have something available to you. Again, Verifin, ACH Behavior Analytics, NICE. There's a lot of different systems that you already probably have, and you can utilize them to help you with these reports. Okay, now, I just want to stress this. Nacha is not requiring you to build a new monitoring system. They're just requiring you to show how you use the alerts you already received to identify that suspicious ACH activity. Okay. Now, that was a lot. I'm going to move over to ACH credit monitoring. This is a little bit new, right? So this is a new territory for a lot of institutions. So it's a little bit unfamiliar, but we're going to get through it, right? So starting in 2026, your RDFIs will be, which is everyone, they're expected to identify credits that may have been sent under false pretenses. So, again, mule activity, business email compromise, suspicious patterns. Now, phase one, as you can see, starts with those larger RDFI, but then phase two brings in everyone else by June. So there is a short window there. So I do recommend, I apologize, getting started on that as quickly as possible, just so you have, you feel prepared. There's no reason to wait until June. to get started on this. And for your third-party service providers that are actually supporting these institutions, you need to think ahead too. So think ahead about how you can best support your RDFIs to help flag unusual credits. So this is really a responsibility that should be shared. And as an RDFI, reach out to those service providers to see what is available. Okay. Now, the approach here really is almost identical to the fraud monitoring. Start with those highest risk accounts and the patterns that usually indicate something's not right. So look for repetitive credits from odd senders, large payments that don't fit your customer's profile, maybe that burst of activity on those new or dormant accounts, things you already probably have in place, reports that I have seen. So I know that you probably do. So it's important to just document these things, have a response plan ready. Also, make sure that your staff knows exactly what to do when they see something questionable. So there's a lot of tools that we're going to discuss: holding the funds if you need to, reviewing the transactions, talking with your BSA team, kind of looping them in on it, and documenting that, like, each step as you go. They want to see that documentation. Okay. And again, those fraud systems that you already have in place, utilize them. Okay. Now, these red flags are great places to start when you're building your monitoring logic. So you have your SEC code mismatches, something unusual like a CCD going to a personal account. They're almost always worth a second look. Now, this doesn't mean every single transaction. Maybe you want to look at high dollar amounts, something that may look suspicious, right? So high dollar credits that don't match that customer's normal activity, repeat payments under that reporting threshold, trying to get things in, and that could signal some mule activity. So whenever you're unsure, I would ask, does this credit make sense for the customer? If it's a no, then maybe that's your cue to dig in, and just make sure that staff is trained to recognize these patterns as well. Because they're, especially that front line, it's really important that they understand what they're looking for, what these patterns are. Okay, so when your team sees something suspicious, here are some tools Nacha does give you. Now, you can delay funds using that voluntary exception. That alone can save you some time, so you can investigate. If you confirm the credit is questionable, you can return it as R17 questionable. And this will tell the ODFI exactly what your concern is. It makes it obvious. And always use that ACH contact registry. Try to reach out directly to that ODFI when fraud's involved. It's extremely important that you have that communication, right? And don't forget to involve your fraud and your BSA teams. I know I've said that multiple times, but it is extremely important that everyone is on the same page, and that everything is documented, and that decision is documented. So whether you returned it or held it, reported it, whatever you did, make sure to document it. Documentation is what's going to be so important here. Always document. Okay, so one thing also I want you to keep in mind when, excuse me, when ACH monitoring, it's not that ACH monitoring should not be siloed from the rest of your BSA processes. You want to really integrate everything into your fraud. So you have ACH alerts, but you may have other unusual activity from deposits, checks, wires. Everything needs to be together, because it's likely you're going to see unusual activity not just in one area. You may have ACH credits coming in, wires going out, or someone coming in and withdrawing funds. So if it's possible, integrate your ACH alerts into your enterprise system so everything flows the same way. So this makes that escalation more consistent, and it'll just really help prevent any gaps between departments. And don't forget documentation. I'm going to say that again. So make sure you're recording what the alerts were, what the decisions are. Document, especially as an auditor coming in and looking at this. Documentation is going to be key for us as well. Okay. Now, everyone in the ACH network does have a role here, and it's really important, to look at the theme of this overall theme of these 2026 changes. ODFIs need to update agreements, evaluate originators and third-party sender controls. Originators and third-party service providers need to put monitoring programs in place and review them. RDFIs need to be ready to spot those suspicious credits and escalate. So no matter who we are, we actually have homework to do. So, feel free to reach out to me. I've got a quick checklist here too, but I am happy to help with any questions you have as you're going through and implementing these changes. So here I just have some action items. So go ahead and get started. Start updating those procedures now, especially for descriptors and monitoring. Those are simple things that you can go ahead and do. Build out those procedures for those reporting that you already have in place. Get those descriptors updated, train your staff, train your clients, make sure everyone's educated and understand, and also maybe run a mock audit before the end of the year, which we're coming close to that, so maybe January, February. Especially, you don't want to wait until the week before this goes live. You want to make sure that it's working before that, right? So those descriptors especially. And if you're a third-party sender, add risk scoring to your originators. Everyone document. Okay, so all of these steps really will help you and save you so much time when the auditors show up to take a look at all of this. Okay, I also wanted to kind of give a tidbit of information for our third-party senders that are on the call today. Your role is huge, these changes too. So you're expected to monitor your clients just like your ODFI. You're also being monitored by your ODFI. So document everything, your alerts, your escalations, your client training, your risk assessments. Think of yourself as both a processor and a compliance partner. And it is actually going to help and build that relationship with your ODFI. Okay. That we see is waiting, of course, until it's too late. I mean, you're waiting till the effective date to begin implementation. So even small institutions need several months, which is not long. I mean, we're running out of time here to update documentation, train staff, test system changes. Another common issue is going to be lack of evidence. You may have good processes in place, but no documentation to show auditors. So just think, even great processes can fall apart when there's no evidence, behind them. So keep written logs, screenshots, samples of reports, proof of monitoring these reports. So the best strategy is to start simple, right? Start early, test your system, document what you do, and just keep improving. Now, Nacha is not expecting perfection with this. However, they are expecting progress and accountability. So they do expect you to get started on this and have something in place. Okay, so we've wrapped up that part. Now we're down to our last quick update. It is an important one though. Nacha is refining the IAT definition just so it aligns better with OFAC expectations. We were seeing some IATs that were coded incorrectly in the network. So this new definition just clarifies that payment needs to involve a financial agency outside of the United States. So that's going to be either directly or indirectly. I'm not going to read the entire update. You do have it here, though, if you do need that. Hopefully, this will just reduce some of the misclassification. Okay, but that is all. Now, we will see more, so just expect that. Just keep in mind that Nacha is already developing future phases. So we'll likely see additional transparency requirements, expanded monitoring expectation, especially more alignment with those instant payments. So stay plugged in because we will have more. All right, so that wraps up everything. Do we have any questions?
Sally, I think we had one from Michael way back earlier. It says, so what if I'm a business sending an ACH payment to the janitorial service that cleans my building? Does that credit push need to stay payroll? Is it compensation?
Okay, so you have a business that is paying you say cleaning service?
I think it's let's assume it's an organization paying a janitorial service, a cleaning
Yes,
service to clean the
yes,
building. Michael's asking if that credit
yes,
push is payroll.
yes, that is payroll. So it's compensation wages, anything that would have, say, a W-2 or a 1099, that would classify as payroll.
And Patty, I see your comment just now. We will send out an email after this that will include a kind of a takeaway from this, the documentation to go with the presentation. You'll also have access to this webinar as well afterwards. I would say, I think just the thing that stands out to me is that there's a chance we're doing these things, but we've never been forced to write them all down, find the gaps, prove it, and it feels like a lot of work.
It does.
So, I mean, I think the more and more I listened to it and thought about it, the more I'm thinking like, yes, I thought we already did all this, but we probably have a good bit of time to sit down and just put our brain on paper, put pen to paper. I guess that makes me sound old talking about paper, but in thinking through how we really get comfortable with the process, because it makes sense. It's the network trying to protect their network. We're going to see accelerating fraud, and it seems like they're really kind of pushing us in a little bit more of the monitoring process that may be existing elsewhere within an organization. What I will say, Sally, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to take too much time away from folks. We really appreciate you spending time with us today. We will again communicate with you after this. You've got Sally's contact information. I'm telling you, if you got a question, she'll answer it. If she can't, we'll pull Michael in, who was stirring the pot earlier with another question. We'll get your questions answered. We really appreciate you joining us, and we'll talk with you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.